Here's a view of the interchange yard looking west. On our left is the double track Conrail main line, and the next track over is the Q&E main track, also used for arrivals and departures. And then we have 3 tracks for classification and sorting of cars, and beyond that we have some industrial spurs. Way off in the distance we see the automobile parts manufacturing plant, and next to it is a warehouse. And at this end of the yard we have the cereal plant with 2 tracks. One track going inside the building for loading finished cereal products, and another track off to the side for unloading of sugars, grains, and liquids as required. We have 4 tracks that wrap around the lake at this end of the layout. The first 2 tracks are the Conrail main line. The 3rd track in is the interchange set-off and lift track, and the far track is the Q&E main line. Branching off from the Q&E main line, opposite the junction with Conrail, is one other industry. This is the abrasives or sandpaper manufacturing plant. It's made up of 3 buildings and receives different grades of sand as well as paper boxcars for the manufacture of sandpaper. This assignment is by far the busiest one on the railroad. Fortunately for the crew operating this part of the layout, the train arrivals and departures sheet contains almost all of the information that the crew needs to go about their duties. On the upper left hand side on the train arrival sheets we see the cars that were on hold from the last operating session, so these would be in the yard, and it tells the crew where they have to get to. So these are F-zone cars, so the crew will know that those have to get out of town on the transfer down to the lower industrial yard. We have the Conrail eastbound train that it'll arrive sometime after the departure of the northbound Q&E train, and it has a block of cars that it's going to drop off in the interchange track, and this tells the crew here how those are to be switched. Similarly, the westbound train will make a set-off as well, and the cars are described by where they're going or what train they're connecting to. And of course the southbound Q&E train that arrives towards the end of the operating session, the entire train terminates in the yard, and it too has instructions for where those cars are going, whether they're connecting to the next day's operating session Conrail trains eastbound or westbound, whether they're to be held constructive placement for a future operating session, or whether they're to go out on a transfer to either the upper industrial yard or lower industrial yard based on the zone letters here, or whether they're placed directly in this zone that this crew is also responsible for. Our first order of business, however, is clearing out all the cars that have been released by customers overnight and that are being brought up to the Interchange Support Yard by the various transfers. So we have a look at our train departure sheet, and we see the first order of business is to build the Q&E northbound train. Previous operating session there were cars from both the Conrail eastbound and westbound that were interchanged to the Q&E, and they'll be at the head end of the northbound train, so those would already be in the yard. We see a number of cars here from the A and B zones, and you might remember that these cars were brought down from the upper industrial spur and are now also sitting in the Interchange Support Yard. This crew is also responsible for setting up the pickups for both the Conrail eastbound and Conrail westbound. Some of these cars are already in the yard, or may in fact be on the interchange track. As you see, some cars came in the last operating session on the southbound Q&E and have been separated for eastbound and westbound pickup, but there are also cars from local industries on the layout that have to make their way up to the Interchange Support Yard and be placed on the interchange track before the eastbound and westbound Conrail trains make their way onto the layout from staging. And lastly, let's not forget the local switching zone, the C and D zones, on either side of the Interchange Support Yard that this crew has to switch as well. So there are 5 cars to be picked up that have been released by the customers, and we see the cars are going to either Conrail Interchange eastbound, Conrail Interchange westbound, or they're part of the northbound Q&E train consist. Before we get started, let's take a quick visual inventory of what is in the Interchange Support Yard and what's already on the interchange tracks. In the back here we see our transfer that came down from the upper industrial spur, and we saw that in the last video. Most of these cars are connecting to the Q&E northbound, except for that first gondola. According to our switch list, it's going to the Conrail eastbound. In the front here we have a block of cars that came in during the last operating session, and these are in fact the head end of the Q&E northbound train. Here are the 3 boxcars that our train sheets identified as hold from the last operating session, and we know these cars have to make their way down to the lower industrial switching zones. We see the start of the eastbound Conrail interchange pickup, lonely boxcar, but we'll add to that. And at the other end of the interchange track, we see there's 4 cars already set up from the previous operating session that came down on the Q&E southbound and are ready for pickup by the westbound Conrail. We will add to this cut some local cars from